I thought it was important that at the beginning of this session, with so many of you here, that we did have a brief discussion about the fact that the ownership of Albatross has changed hands, and of course, as customers, you're a very important part of that transaction. So some of you may have heard of IMS Health, many of you probably haven't. So I thought I'd say a few words about what our company is, just so you know what Albatross now forms a part of. My name is Tim Sheppard, and I'm the General Manager of IMS Health's UK and Ireland business. So I run all of the business for UK and Ireland. UK and Ireland, we have about 700 employees, so we're a reasonably large company. We're called IMS Health because all we do is health. We don't do anything else. But we do cover a broad spectrum of health. So we do a lot of clinical research, we do a lot of epidemiology. It's mostly data and science-based activity. But I have a few slides to share with you. I've worked in healthcare IT for about 15 years, which probably isn't as long as many of you, but I very rarely admit this to NHS audiences, but I worked on the national programme for IT. That's why I got this new tie. And actually, Peter won't admit it, but he also worked on the national programme for IT. One thing I've had in my career, or been very enthused about in my personal life and my career, is the use of information to change outcomes. Change outcomes for patients, change safety outcomes, and perhaps in this context, make sure the cost of those outcomes is the right one. So I'm always passionate about what IMS Health can do with information to change patient outcomes, and therefore merging with Dimitri's organisation just adds to that. So I think it's really exciting that this cost benchmarking group comes together, so many of you come here, and we all presumably have pretty much the same aim of providing great care to patients at the right cost. Of course, Dimitri is one of the greatest assets of Albatross, and I hope he'll be at IMS Health for many, many years to come, and his team, of course, as well, who've come across. So I started talking about IMS. For a healthcare IT company, we're pretty old. We were founded in 1954 in Belgium, of all places. Our headquarters are now in the US, but we were founded in Belgium. And essentially it was built on the idea of gathering healthcare data and providing analytics, mostly to the pharmaceutical industry, I'd say, initially. Mostly around research and development of treatments, but also appropriate use of drugs as well in clinical settings. We're a big company, we're in pretty much every country on the planet. We, at the moment, in terms of, because we look at mostly at medicines, we capture about 75% of the world's prescriptions, and we use that data to analyse how drugs are used locally and globally. And I guess the company works in three ways. We have lots of very clever people, a huge number of epidemiologists, statisticians, health economists. In London alone, we have 95 health economists based up in King's Cross. So a lot of science-based people. They combine, work closely with our data. So our data assets are very important to us. I spoke already about how many prescriptions we capture around the world, but we also have about 500 million anonymized patient records, mostly from the US, which again, when combined with pharmaceutical usage, give fantastic insight into how treatment is provided. And the final thing is technology. And increasingly, I think if you wind back 10 years, our company had no technology. We just had big databases and clever people. But increasingly, I think it's more and more important to deliver up information in usable ways. And that's something we're going to be talking, I think Dimitri's going to talk about it a bit later as well, is how can we use technology to get the information that you use delivered up in a way that is most useful to you and provides the greatest insight. So technology is an important part. I think actually we should all think about how we invest in the technologies that give proper insight. I'm not talking about desktops and software, I'm talking about analytics, predictive analytics and those sort of things that can really drive insight for all of us in how care is provided. So this is a sort of summary slide of IMS. And the relationships on the left are really important to us. So we gather so much data that our relationship with government is very important. We actually provide lots of data to government. We have one of the most comprehensive data sets of what is prescribed in hospitals in the UK, and therefore both NICE and the Health and Social Care Information Centre take our data in order to understand what's going through hospital pharmacies. So our relationship with government's important. Life science is important. We do an awful lot of research for them, and that's probably the primary source of revenue, is working with pharmaceutical companies right from early stage R&D right through to kind of launch processes, looking at the health economics of the products they launch. Healthcare, we have over 130 NHS trusts as customers, but we also have payer and provider customers, as the Americans call it, across Europe and across the Middle East and across North America, but it's a growing part of our business as well. And finally, academia. I talked about the scientific rigor of what we do. I think when you're managing large amounts of data, if you don't manage it rigorously, and it's not seen to be managed rigorously, you're going to lose the trust of the clinicians, and you'll lose the trust of leadership very quickly if you can't ensure that it's presented in the most academically robust way. So that's a very important relationship for us as well. It's a slight, I hope you regard this as an opportunity for Albatross. There's a name change, but I hope you will experience very little different, apart from hopefully some enhancement of the service we'll provide to you. If you do have concerns, I hope you come and talk to me or to Peter, who I'll introduce in a minute, and just ask any question you like, or put your hand up now and ask a question. But if you have any concerns about IMS merging with Albatross, then do raise them, and we'll try and make sure we address them for you. So, thank you very much for listening to me. As I said, I run the UK and Ireland business, and within that, Peter Lane is the director for all of our healthcare business. And so it's actually Peter and Dimitri who are now the partnership in our new business. So, Peter, thank you.
Thank you. So much so that Dimitri and I swapped wardrobe notes the night before to make sure we're both wearing red ties. I gambled on him sticking to his Soviet Union roots, and I wore mine. And very similar to Dimitri, I've got a military background as well, so I can assure you we have many interesting conversations, some about healthcare. And as Tim's indicated, the new home for Albatross is different. There's a new logo, but very little else for you should change. You should see Dimitri, Mike, Andrea, Andy, James, and others, Jack, etc., still dealing with you as a client. You'll see some new faces, but it won't be in place of, it will be as well as the people, the relationships you're used to. I just want to talk through how my team is focused for the next, let's say, 12, 18, 24 months. Pathway analytics on the left-hand side, and no hard sells here, you'll be glad to know. On the top right-hand corner, patient level costings and benchmarking, not necessarily at the bottom, but on this diagram they are. And how we're bringing those together so that we can try and have one single approach to you as an NHS organisation. And I think there's different stakeholders that we're touching within your organisations potentially. There's operations, there's finance, care delivery, and I'm going through the slides because I want to get Dimitri up here to get back to the user group activities. But the key for me is how do we exploit, how do we help you exploit all that data in those three areas? It's key for us, and you'll hear a little bit more about Dimitri, that we don't take away anything from what we provide to you today, but how do we potentially expand and provide you even more value for the data sets that you've got with either the data sets you share amongst yourselves or further data sets that you have within your individual trust. So we're starting to look at and talk to some of you about that. So I'm going to hand over shortly to Dimitri. The only thing I would say is that we have a phrase in my team which is looking at and trying to provide you actionable insights. Not necessarily providing you academic interesting insights, which as per Tim's diagram, some of our clients are academia, so they would be interested in some of the scientific findings we find. But I think at your level, working with your community of stakeholders in trust, you want things that you can do something about, not just interesting information. So that's the target for us to help you get there. As Tim said, we're around for the day, so if you want to talk to myself or to Tim or to any of the team, we're here for the day. It'd be great to have met some of you before, but it'd be great to meet more of you during the course of the day. Thank you.